First, may I call to order the joint meeting of the panel on Manpower and Panel on Welfare Services. First, we have to elect a chairman. Madam Yuen-han has been chairing a meeting since 9 in the morning. Of course, I don't mind if she would like to continue to take the chair, but I think I should be kind to her. I think I better sit with members there. I nominate Mr. Cheuk-yan. All right, if there is no objection, all right, Cheuk-yan nominated. Thank you very much for giving me the chance to be a gentleman. Please invite the administration to join us. The item is Manpower situation of residential care homes for the elderly. We are going to proceed as a joint panel meeting. Please invite the administration to join us. Before they arrive, I'd like to mention that we've received 2 papers. One is from a submission from Community Care Nursing Home Workers General Union, and the other is a paper presented or provided by the administration. So, and also a background brief. Let us welcome Ms. Yuen-han, or Ms. Cecilia Lee, Assistant Director of Social Welfare, Mrs. Eleanor Chen, PAS for Labour and Welfare, and Mr. Roy Law, Senior Labour Officer. I'll give the floor to Ms. Lee first to brief us on the paper, and then I'll open the floor to members for questions. Thank you, Chairman. We're here today to brief members on the manpower situation of RCH homes for the elderly. Now, of course, when it comes to manpower, there is supply and demand, and we have specified some minimum requirements in the Residential Care Homes Elderly Persons Ordinance and the regulation. These are just minimum requirements, but in fact, many RCHs are staffed better than the statutory requirements. In particular, for institutions under our board place schemes, they have to comply with details of contracts or funding and service agreements. They are providing a manpower, or they have an establishment above the statutory requirements. All right, talk about the supply and demand. If we look at the pool of resources, manpower resources, and if we talk about professional positions, the supply is from UGC-funded programs, and by these I mean nurses and paramedical staff. In the triennium from 2012 to 15, there are additional places, but honestly speaking, we have to say that this is just the pool of manpower resources, and they are also sought after by the private sector in hospitals. And as for the welfare sector, the administration has provided substantial resources to enhance training capacity to meet the need of the welfare sector. Now, for enrolled nurses, starting from June 2006, or since 2006, since the first class, now we're already in the 12th class. There are already 4 classes graduated, and over 90% or 400 of the graduates have been employed by the welfare sector. They provide 1,500 enrolled nurses. So if after completion of training, they can stay in the welfare sector for 2 years above, then they can have full reimbursement of the training fees. And then occupational therapists and physiotherapists as mentioned in a paragraph in our paper, we also offer a sponsorship scheme. So for graduates that undertake to serve the welfare sector for no less than 2 consecutive years, then they also get the training free, and there are 32 PTs and 27 OTs. And they should graduate by early 2014, and they will be new blood for our welfare and rehabilitation sectors. Regarding health workers and care workers, HWs have to complete approved training courses by the SWD, and for CWs, they are also important, and there is also an important grade. While they're not required to go through training, the ERB, the Employees Retraining Board, have many courses for them. In other words, these trainees don't have to pay fees, and they guaranteed employment. There are about 1,300 per year. 1,300 places per year. We have no intention to import foreign labor, but from submission, we understand that the sector or the trade union is against that proposal. Yes, importation of foreign labor is a way to meet the supply, but the government has to balance the views of different sectors. We do appreciate, or I believe members agree, that we should ensure the jobs go to Hong Kong people first, in particular in care for the elderly. Well, elderly persons want local persons to be their carers. So we will keep a close eye on the staffing situation of the elderly homes. All right, I talked about supply and demand. Is an indisputable fact that there is one manpower shortage because we are in contact with RCHEs, including those in the private sector. We know that the frontline positions quite involves strenuous work, and some people may describe services for the elderly and obnoxious trade. I hope that the community will not view this sector in this way. We have seen many staff who are experienced in this sector, and they do serve the elderly with a heart. So if there is any resources or measure we can do to retain, we can implement to retain current staff or to boost recruitment, we will certainly implement them. And as mentioned in the paper, last year we had the second funding provision for subvented RCHEs and those under the board place scheme. There's already the second time when we offer extra resources for them to provide more competitive salaries for recruitment and retention of staff. And we have also greatly increased the grants for homes under our EBPS grants for taking care of those with dementia, for instance. So they will have extra resources to employ person or procure services to enhance the level of care in these homes.
So I would think I'll just pause here, and I would like to listen to members' views, and I hope that your views can help us strengthen the service quality at RCHEs. We also hope to recruit the younger generation to serve in RCHEs. Perhaps I'll pause here. Thank you. So any members who wish to speak? Mr. Michael Tan, but then he's left the room. Mr. Wong Kwok-yin. Thank you, Chairman. Manpower in RCHEs According to information from LAB, there has been a consistent shortage of manpower. We have been applying for import of labor. Does the administration have information on private RCHEs in this respect? I think the subvented RCHEs are okay with their staffing, but then for private RCHEs, they are consistently short-handed. So does the administration have information on the figures on the lack of staff in private RCHEs which need to import workers, and which sectors or which job types are most in need of manpower? Mr. Law? Say for the supplementary labor scheme, how many have been deployed to work in private RCHEs? According to the supplementary labor scheme, care workers who work in RCHEs in 2010, 636, 2011, 431, and 2012, 864. They are the care workers. Can you tell us the duration of the contract? For every contract, they can work for the same employer for 24 months at most. So, Chairman, I would also like to know that what is the average wage of these imported workers? For us to better understand why that there is this shortage. Yes, Mr. Law. Under the supplementary labor scheme, employers are required to pay according to the median monthly income as disclosed by the CNSD, and then for care workers it's $9,020 at the moment. Employers must pay higher than this amount or level. Chairman, I would also like to know, what about RCHEs operated by the government? What is the wage for the care workers in these institutions? Ms. Lee, do you have the figure for the government RCHEs? In subvented RCHEs, we are doing a lump sum grant, and we are not requesting the institutions to give us detailed figures, but as long as they meet with the regulations, they are acceptable. But as far as we understand generally, when I look at the recruitment advertisements of these private subvented RCHEs, is around $10,000 a month. So, Chairman, you can now understand that there is a difference between subvented RCHEs and private RCHEs when it comes to the pay, and that also explains why that there are consistently lacking staff. Now that Mr. Wong Kok-Kin asked this question, I want to clarify first before I ask Mr. Michael Tan to ask the question, and then I'll ask everybody to speak for 5 minutes. I want to clarify this. The Elderly Commission asked the administration to raise the ratio of imported workers from 1 to 3 to 1 to 1. Well, as far as I understand, there is no ratio. Is that right? Thank you, Chairman. According to the supplementary labor scheme, employers who import workers are required to abide by the ratio as agreed upon by the LAB. For every 2 local workers, at most 1 worker can be imported. So every employer is required to employ a certain ratio of local workers before he is allowed to import workers, and that is there is a ratio of 2 to 1. Now this case for RCH is a little bit special, because the LAB has looked again at the manpower needs for this sector, and in November 2007 they embarked on this special course. So when RCHE imports workers, if all the local workers have reached the average pay level or median income level, $9,020, then they can use this 2.2 to 1 ratio to import workers. Otherwise, they have to use a ratio of 3 to 1. That is basically an incentive for RCHEs to retain or absorb new people to join the sector. Yes, Mr. Michael Tan. Thank you, Chairman. How much time do I have? 5 minutes. Of course, you can wait for a second round if you want. I have so much to say, and I hope that I don't have enough time. I have several demands. You don't have to answer me right away today. During the New Year, people are very concerned about tourists lacking accommodation, hotel accommodation. And I heard this case about the RCHE, a 73-year-old care worker, and he has already retired, but he was recruited again to take care of the elderly. So it goes to show that there is an acute shortage of manpower in the sector. Is the situation of where we are having elderly people taking care of the elderly people, or the elderly people taking care of elderly younger than them. So it's like they are providing mutual support to each other. For some private RCHEs, some workers have to work continuously for 30 hours during the Spring Festival time. And then the responsible person of that RCHE was on leave. If Hong Kong people think that it's ridiculous that tourists can't find hotel accommodation, isn't it more ridiculous for the elderly to take care of the elderly here in Hong Kong? Under EBPS, a care worker, as average age is 52.3 years old, and 18 to 20% of them are aged over 60. What does it show? It means that no young people are willing to join the trade. Now, 5 or 10 years down the road, how are we going to resolve this problem? I think the manpower shortage has reached a critical point. Some RCHEs told me that actually 90% of the RCHEs are breaching the regulations, and because there is this acute shortage of manpower, they are forced to break the law. The vacancy ratio is around 20%. Well, how come that you give us a very rosy picture when you look at the situation? Well, because these RCHEs are asking their relatives to fake as workers or care workers of the RCHE. So those are really the real workers. They have to show a greater work responsibility. I know that I have to be very careful when looking at this. Is it true because the pay is too low and then they cannot bring in people? So I look at the figures again. In May 2011, when SMW was introduced, in the 12 months following that, there was an average pay of $32 per hour. But even for that, nobody was willing to join the train. For the security workers and the cleaner workers, they got $28 per hour at least. So for an obnoxious type job type like this, then you have to pay, say, for $40 to $50 per hour in order to attract people. Now, why aren't they paying this level? Because 80% of the elderly are on CSSA, and they pay the home fee for that out of that. So in that case, the private RCHE would not be able to pay $40 to $50 per hour. If they are going to pay that level, then they will have to incur a loss. So I think perhaps we can force the government to change the system so that elderly staying in RCHE on a different CSSA system. That can be for the long term. Now, what is pressing is that we should take care of the elderly now. I have several demands. So for those not under the board place scheme, can we raise the ratio for them to bring in imported workers 3 to 1, 2 to 1? Is that better? Now, for supplementary labor scheme, most of them come from the mainland. Can we bring in some people from other countries as well? For young people from the mainland, they are not willing to join this kind of trade, which is quite obnoxious in nature. For board place institutions, before 2003, these board place institutions in the portion of the non-board place systems, they can use that ratio. But then after the board place scheme, they couldn't use that ratio. So now the unemployment rate is so low. Why are we still using this 2003 ratio? Can we relax it to 2:1 or 3:1 ratio? So I have this one other important point to make. Please allow me to finish. About the shortage of nurses. Those work duties which can only be performed by the nurses, well, there is a great shortage of manpower for those job duties. And the HA has turned out some graduates of nurses who can perform these duties, but then this SW doesn't recognize these nurses. So one of my suggestions is that can we give them a rank 4 in the qualifications framework for these nurses so that they can perform these duties related to the tubes and the syringes and injections and all that. I think that's very important. I hope that the administration can consider that. Now, if my proposal is accepted, then you may have to change the ratio of, say, having one nurse and then one rank 4 health worker taking care of 60 residents on average. And I think that proposal is feasible, and I hope that the administration can consider it. I hope to give some time for the administration to respond. We have 4 demands, and then we'll ask Mr. Pun Xiaoping to speak. Now, if we want to follow up, then please do so after we are finished with all these. Okay, second, Ms. Lee. About these duties involving the tubes and the injections. And actually, that was a pilot program in 2008. In the social welfare sector, there was an acute shortage of nurses. The training program for nurses in the welfare sector started in only 2006, and then 110 nurses graduated under that program in 2008. So at that time, the HADH, Hong Kong Council of Social Welfare, and the SWD and elderly groups have agreed embarking on this pilot program. And the design was very rigorous. We asked 29 health workers to undergo close to 200 hours of training and practicum. The 2 tubes refer to the urine tube and the feeding tube, and then there is the injection or subcutaneous injection. These are performed by used to perform by the nurses. So because there was such a shortage of nurses, we embarked on this pilot program whereby the health workers can really independently perform those duties. Now, after the pilot program was completed, our conclusion was this. Yes, the health workers have mastered the skills, but then in RCHE, there were in fact not many chances that these duties needed to be performed. So our conclusion that this could not go on. The health workers, after mastering the skills, they could not really perform those duties. They still needed an experienced nurse to supervise them in performing these duties. So that couldn't help much in relieving the work duties. So in 2008, the first batch of nurses for the welfare sector graduated. There were 110 nurses. And from 2006 up to now, we held 12 classes. And then there were around 1,470 nurses who graduated. And the administration's commitment is this: if resources permit, the training program for nurses in the welfare sector will go on. So I hope that you can understand that in implementing this pilot program on the 2 tubes and 1 injection, we have to also take heed of the views of the medical sector. Well, rather, we would want to train more nurses for the welfare sector who can work really in the RSHE.
Mr. Michael Tian talked about importation of foreign labor. It's true that in 2003, private RCHEs could import CWs, and that also included private RCHE as the bought place homes. But you have to understand that in back then the unemployment rate was very high, and then since for the bought place scheme homes, they were receiving government subsidy, and there's the consensus that we should protect the employment of local workers first. And back then, the employees were more willing to join this sector, and I was able to recruit CWs. So we call halt to the scheme. But we understand that it's not easy to recruit young people to join this profession. So we have to review the whole employment market, the incentive for young people to join this job before we reconsider importation of labor. We understand that some organizations, including private homes and also training organizations of post-secondary sector, are thinking of ways to attract young people to join the trade. Of course, they have to start as the basic rank, and you must let these young people see that there is job prospect. You cannot expect a young person to be a CW forever. So the government, private organizations, subvented homes, and post-secondary training institutions are discussing whether special programs can be used to attract young people to join as frontline workers, and that there will be a ladder, a professional ladder for them to gradually to become a CW, to be a HW, and then an enrolled nurse, and then a registered nurse or a nurse with a degree. And then in RCGs, there is the position of home manager. They may eventually make their way to become a home manager. We want to let young people see that there is job future here. Mr. Law, please be very brief, because we've overrun severely. Yes, regarding the supplementary labor scheme, and if an employer is granted permission to import labor, then an approval in principle will be granted first. We do not dictate where the employer can employ foreign labor. Now, usually CWs are imported from the mainland, but just like employers of supplementary labor scheme, they can provide the qualifications and also the conditions of employment to the Immigration Department for approval. So we do not restrict the source of importation. Of course, trade unions will have reservation if you want to resolve this problem by importation of labor. Because I've sat on the LAB as well, we allowed labor to be imported for this trade, hoping that in the long term we can train sufficient manpower to fill the vacancies. And of course, the government doesn't have a concrete plan to meet the manpower demand. The construction sector is facing a similar problem, but they have very proactive measures to attract young people to join the construction industry. I like to have more accurate figures. Now you have more than 10,000 registered HWs. I'd like to know what is the manpower demand from RCHEs for HW, and for ENs, while you'll be able to train 15,000, but that may not be enough to fill the vacancies in hospitals. How will people be interested to join the welfare sector? I'd like to know what ways and means do they have to attract female employees to join this sector. So I'd like to know whether there are more accurate projections and statistics from the administration. Ms. Lee, Manpower. We expect that in the coming 3 to 5 years, we will consider new services to be introduced, and we will also consider wastage of existing manpower through retirement or natural wastage. So for ENs, we used to have 110 places in each class. Now we are taking in 160, and every year there are 2 classes. So 2 years after, we have 320 ENs graduating. As regards the demand and supply for HWs, we've heard from RCHEs that the shortage is not that severe. So I said that there will be many new EN graduates, and I think the manpower situation is not as tight as it was 2 years ago. But I think, frankly speaking, the most acute shortage occurs with CWs. They are really the frontline workers, and we must have a strategy to attract young people to join, so that they work as 1 or 2 years as CWs, and they will see a promotion prospect for them. We are discussing with the relevant organizations. But Mr. Poon said, for instance, do you have figures such as the demand for HW and ENs? For instance, you need 20,000 HWs if only 10,000. All right. You say that there are 8,000 already in service, but do you have the need? Do you have any statistics on further need, further demand? We don't have such statistics now, so please provide them later. I think Mr. Poon would like to know the supply and demand situation, and the most acute shortage occurs at the CW level, and I think we would like to have information on that. Mr. Chen Kim-po. Thank you. I'd like to ask about manpower supply for OTs and PTs. Only Polytechnic University offer training programs for OTs and PTs. Have you considered allowing other post or tertiary institutions to offer similar programs? And do we have enough lecturers and trainers? Do you have to import it from overseas? And as Mr. Michael Tian said, there is a big question mark as to whether these RCHEs comply with your statutory requirements. So do you conduct spot checking? And what are the penalties if an RCHE is found to be below the standard? Well, I think members can rest assured about the teaching qualifications of lecturers, because OT and PTs are provided as master and bachelor courses in PolyU. So very soon we'll have 59 graduates. I think members can rest assured that these places are those beyond those funded by UGC. Members are concerned as to whether our CHEs are sufficiently staffed. Let me tell you how our licensing unit inspect these homes. We always conduct surprise visits. We will not have scheduled or regular inspections. We won't inform the RCHEs beforehand when we are coming. So whenever we see that a home is understaffed, for instance, there should be 5 CWs. We ask them to stand in line to provide the person particulars and also records. And if it is substandard, then we will give warning. It's strict liability, no defense. Mr. Michael Tian asked whether the operator would ask relatives to come in to fake as CWs. No, we have to check the employee records as well, unless they are also faking the records. Of course, we have also prosecuted our CHEs for forged documents, and such cases have gone to the court. But members can rest assured all our inspections are conducted as surprise visits. And I hope members understand that we can't have a team so strong that we can inspect each and every home at every moment. I think the elderly persons living in these homes and their family members play a very important role in helping us to regulate or monitor these RCHEs. We frequently receive complaints or reports from such relatives, and we will take immediate action once we receive a report. This is very important. I don't think members are asking for a big team of inspectors to be inspecting the RCHEs every moment. And we also adopt a risk-based management approach. If at our surprise visits we spot any irregularities, we will visit that particular RCHE more frequently and monitor its performance more closely. I hope members understand that we do attach a lot of significance to the quality of service of our CHEs. So I hope members can have confidence in us. Mr. Chen, I'd like to know when will you prosecute, how many warnings, and do you have statistics of prosecution the past year? Do you have prosecution figures? Give us a moment. I have to find out the statistics. Well, our objective is not to revoke or suspend a license. What we want is improvement. So we have issued many advisory letters. Sometimes we see that there are some irregularities, and we always issue advisory letters. In 2011, there were 3,200 odd cases, and 398 in 2012, and 3,100 odd in 2012. So what kind of advice in relation to the management, manpower, hygiene, staffing, building safety, and fire safety, etc. Warning letters. In the past 3 years, the number of warning letters issued to RCHEs, the total number. In 2011, there was 409, 367 in 2011, and also 351 in 2012. And what about prosecutions? During the same period, we have successfully prosecuted 10 cases in 2010, and 10 in 2011, and 12 in 2012. Well, we don't have too many successful convictions, but according to the relevant legislation,
發出咗警告之後呢，係要求佢幾耐或者2個禮拜。
after the warning, we would ask the RCHE to ratify the situation in, say, 2 weeks or 4 weeks' time, and then we would conduct another surprise check. And if the RCHE is found to be breaching the regulations under Section 19, we will then prosecute. Our goal is to help them improve their quality of service. My question is ask you to strive for an 8-hour work time for the care workers. Now, when you buy the places, and you are using the 8-hour as a yardstick in calculating your costs. But then, when the RCHE employ people, you do not look at whether they actually work for 8 hours. So I don't know when you are going to take any action. You've been stalling the issue, I think. The manpower and the quality of service is really mixed up a vicious cycle, and the pay is excessively low. Mr. Michael Tian said that you can hire people only by $40, but then you are only paying, say, $30 plus. Then in a private RCHE, they are paying for $8,000 per month, and they are asked to work, say, for 12 hours a day or 10 hours a day. And if that kind of situation persists, the attraction is really small. Well, let's not shy away from the term obnoxious, because the work itself is quite meaningful. But in reality, the work is really hard on the employees. Now, if you want to improve the remuneration, that's quite not possible, because the elderly are on CSSA, and they're paying their home fees out of that. And then, in the EBPS, you may say buy half of the places, and then say, does it mean that half of the staff work for 8 hours and the other half not for 8 hours? Can we standardize the work hours in these institutions? So, actually, for private RCHE providing service for elderly who are on CSSA, the problem can never be solved, because they are just having $4,000 in CSS payment per month. Now, even if you import workers, you will not be able to solve the problem. Now, because no people would like to join the sector, then my question for Mr. Law is this. The labor unions have been complaining that the imported workers work, say, 12 hours a day, and they don't get paid for OT work. And they have to ask the employers for the pay due to them. And then the Labor Department has not been doing enough. Mr. Law, can you tell us whether you have taken out prosecutions for employers importing foreign workers? Can we break out from this vicious cycle? Say, at least you can just ask people to work 8 hours a day. Why can't you buy more places, say 80 or 90% of the places, and not 50%? But so at least there is a group of quality staff staying in the RCHE. If you offer an 8-hour work day, then you'll be able to attract young people to join the sector. If they are willing to join, then the industry, and that bodes well for the industry. Now, if you pay them $8,000 and ask them to work 12 hours a day, you are not going to get any people. So what would be your response about place institutions? we are making improvement and on our subsidy. And there were indeed a few years that we bought, say, 40 places in one RCHE. The ratio was really low. Members also said that we bought, say, 3 places in one RCHE. So in the past few years, where resources permit, we would be devoting more resources to enhance the quality of service in RCHEs under the bought place scheme. We hope to enhance or promote all bought place institutions to EA1 homes. And we have this scheme to upgrade EA2 homes to A1 homes. And we have devoted a lot more resources, and the response has been very enthusiastic. At first, we were worried whether EA2 homes are interested in being upgraded. But then we see that members of the public have higher aspirations on elderly homes, and they prefer EA1 homes over EA2 homes. So EA homes do have the determination to be upgraded. We hope to pour in more resources, and that they can bring in more quality staff. Chairman, you mentioned that the frontline workers are required to work for only 8 hours only a day. I hope that members who have connections with private RCHEs can advise these home operators to be good employers. If we devote more resources to these homes, they can really pass on the benefits to the staff, because in this sector we need people to take care of the elderly. Their work can't be replaced by machines, so the resources have to be devoted to the staff. So for the 8-hour work a day on this subject, I hope that if we buy more places from private RCHEs, they can have more resources to maneuver, and they can make better arrangements and offer a better package to their employees. I hope that this can be achieved. Well, how I differ from you is that I don't hope. I rather that this be put into regulation. Mr. Law, on importation of workers, the Labour Department has been carrying out that on 3 fronts. For every imported worker within 8 weeks, he or she must attend a briefing session organized by the LD. And in that briefing, information on the employment ordinance and conditions under the supplementary labor scheme, say the amount of pay and the payment day and so on, will be distributed to them. In that briefing, we will also explain to the imported workers that if they have inquiries and complaints, they can call our 24-hour hotline to make reports or complaints. We also put emphasis on this, that the imported workers, when their rights are harmed, they can make immediate reports to the LD. Once we receive the complaint, the inspector from Labour Department will make a surprise visit to the RCHE immediately to enforce the legislation more effectively. We would conduct the checks during the evening time so that we can take a good look at the employment situation, whether there is a lot of overtime work and whether there is unpaid OT work, so we can conduct our visits more effectively that way. We would also explain to the workers that if their rights are harmed, they can also try to make claims with the Labor Relations Division of the Labour Department. Now, once we've received reports, we will take action immediately in the application forms. The Labour Department has been providing assistance to these workers. Thank you very much, Chairman. Mr. Tommy Cheung next. Chairman, I have to declare that I have a company running an RSHE. So please don't mistake me for speaking on the interest for the interest of my company. On the 8-hour work day, I have some reservation on that. I think the working hours are too short. Well, people, if they work for 8 hours, their pay would not be able to enable them to make ends meet. Initially, people liked working 8 hours, and if they work, say, afterwards, they found that if they work for 10 hours, they will be able to get $10,000 per month, and if they work less, then they will get a lower pay. The government officials told us that good employers offer 8-hour workday, and those unscrupulous ones offer a 12-hour workday. Now, my question is, which RCHE is adequately staffed? So, if you are suggesting an 8-hour workday, then who is going to take care of the elderly? I think we should tackle the problem of staff shortage instead. For, say, workplace institutions, EA1 or EA2 homes. Well, I have a home and I understand the situation very clearly. What kind of pay level can you afford? Because many of the elderly are using their CSSA payment to pay for home fees, and you can't raise home fees in that case. Now, you ask your staff to work for 8 hours a day, and then you are also asking the employers to give them good benefits, high pay. So how can they make their operation viable? Even for non-profit making organizations like the Tonghua Group of Hospitals, they can't really be making a breaking balance in their books. Now, the administration says that you want the employers to be good employers. But then it's difficult for them to continue their operation with such short working hours. Please don't label us as unscrupulous workers, unscrupulous employers if we ask people to work more than 8 hours. I think this is unacceptable, this kind of labeling on us. I think we should import more workers until the day when we have adequate local workforce. I think the manpower shortage is acute in all types of jobs, physiotherapists or what. Of course, legislation is important, but the acute manpower shortage problem is also very serious and very real. We have an aging population, and I think the administration must really allow more workers to be imported.
Ms. Lee, do you have any response? Not really. Okay, Dr. Kwokaki. Thank you, Chairman. The greatest problem is the whole sector is very fragmented. Now, if an elderly person is lucky and admitted to a subvented home or to an EBOS or EAI or EA2, well, he's very lucky. They have a lot of protection. But for those who are living in private LCHs, they have no protection at all. But it's not appropriate for us to blame all the private homes, because we know that many elderly persons rely on their CSSA payment and disability allowance to pay the fees. I have seen many such cases, and therefore standards are rather different, and some elderly persons cannot afford more, and they can only get that $3,000-4,000 from the government. So who is to blame? The government is unscrupulous, as well as the operators. All elderly persons are just the same. One is lucky enough to be admitted to a subvented home or an EBPS home, and the other is not so lucky. So the government has to resolve this problem. Otherwise, you cannot resolve the manpower issue, because elderly persons can only pay that much, and operators have to make a profit. I won't criticize them as being unscrupulous. They have to make a profit, and they can only employ people in the 60s or 70s to take care of the inmates. So if the government doesn't change its attitude, this problem is not going to go away. No matter how many yens or OTs and PTs you train, of course, the subvented homes, the EBPS homes, they can afford them. But for a private home, how can it afford an EN paying $30,000-40,000 a month for it? And it is the elderly persons that suffer. I don't know how the government can resolve this problem. You refer to the EA1 and EA2 homes. You tell us that you're going to do your best. You have to give us some statistics. Please tell us when this 580 odd homes can observe the same standards as those subvented homes. Well, I have been talking with the housing authority. Perhaps certain housing estates can become elderly homes, a center of elderly homes. Now, there are so many elderly persons living in private homes. They're given no protection at all. When can the government turn them all into subvented or EA1, EA2 homes? Even by importation of labor, you cannot resolve this problem. The standard will not be greatly improved by that move. Places, well, first we have to identify the right locations for contract RCHEs or subvented RCHEs. And on another occasion, we have provided a paper on the number of places available as subvented or contract RCHEs. And also, we also have identified a dozen or so sites to build RCHEs. In the short term, we also like to secure more places, EA1 homes under our EBPS. If a private home is assessed to be in compliance with our requirements, then we will buy some of the places in the home to make them EA1 home, and then will mean extra resources for overall improvement of standard of the whole home. This is the quickest way for us to increase places. As pointed out in the paper, this will certainly be our way forward. We will buy more places from private homes to turn them into EA1 homes. I'm asking about the timetable for the 500 odd homes. When can they be improved? I'd like to know how quickly you're going to proceed so that these private homes can be upgraded to that of EA1 homes. Yes, every year It depends on new resources we can secure. In the past 2 to 3 years, we have already purchased or bought and other 700 odd EA1 places. This year, 600 odd EA2 places will be upgraded to UA1, and we will buy another 100 EA1 places. We have set out in another paper talk about the number of additional EA1 places to be bought every year. That means it would take 40 to 50 years, even if there is no new demand, using your pace. Can you expedite your pace so that you can deal with all the 500 places? Well, we have to extend this meeting a little bit by at least 15 minutes. All right, Mr. Chairman Ben and Mr. Cheuk-yan, and I'll let you answer that question about the timetable. I don't have a definite time frame, but we are moving towards that direction. Now, if a private home can attain a certain level when resources permit, then we will buy more places, more EA1 places from that home in that year or in the subsequent year. Mr. Chen Xingban, so we heard the next year there will be more resources to upgrade most EA2 places to EA1. We welcome that move. Still, many private homes have told me that the contract will be renewed, and they also face rent increases. Many private homes rely on CSSA payments of their elderly inmates as fees. So can the administration considering being more lenient with CSSA payments for those living in RCHEs so that such homes can employ more staff or offer more competitive salaries? For the coming year, if some private homes face substantial rent increases, will the government buy places from them in the light of their special circumstances? Well, last year there was a working group to review our set of proposals. We've included manpower, rent, and other expenses, and expenses for food and accommodation, so on and so forth. We believe that the grant we are offering is reasonable. The working group decided to adjust the rate according to the current CPI. And CPI takes into account a lot of factors, including salaries or wages and rent. So every year, we will adjust the rate according to the subvention rate, according to changes in the CPI. And I think that's a major improvement for homes. Any follow-up? No. Thank you. Mr. John Kwok-Chu. To be followed by Mac May Kuhn and Helena Wong and KK Film. Well, you were suddenly a rush towards the end of the meeting. All right, there are 4. Now, if 5 minutes for each member, that would take us to 5 p.m. I have to draw a line because Michael Tian will have a second go. All right, how about 4 minutes each? I have to cut the speaking time for each member. Mr. John Kwok-Chu, thank you, Chairman. I will be very succinct. I'd like to ask the administration, it's of course good for you to buy places from private homes. But can you give us the following statistics? The percentage of places you buy in a home on the average. I know usually it's over half, but even 51% is one half. If 51% or half of the places are subsidized, and yet because you require a home to satisfy the staffing requirement and size requirement, I think that is a big burden on the home itself. We're asking whether you can gradually increase the percentage of places bought to 70% or even 80%, so that the home can be viable. Well, the better the services, the harder it is for a certain home to be viable because of better food and larger space and so forth. So can you tell us on average the percentage of places you buy from a home? And can, for those RCHEs that are running quite satisfactorily, can you gradually increase the percentage of places bought to 70%? We're going to do it step by step. As I said, I cannot give you the average percentage now, but as I said in the past, but I think it's around 50% or at most 50%, but it can be lower in some cases because earlier on we might stop at 20%. 30%, but in the past couple of years and in future bought place exercises for RCHE homes that are satisfactory in standard, and or if the standard is good, then our target is to move towards 50%. There is also another indicator, the demand from that neighborhood. Otherwise, you will blame us for wasting public money if in that particular district there is no elderly person who would like to stay in such a home. So the service quality as well as the demand from that community. Some year homes or some have 100% occupancy, and then they will enjoy a good reputation, and people would tend to choose such homes. There's an incentive for it to improve its standards. So for those that are still below 50%, we hope that they can achieve a better standard, and then we gradually move up to 50%. Mr. Zhang asked whether we can go beyond 50% to 60 or 70%. That will be for the next step. Because there are some homes who say that, well, we have already joined your EBPS and yet we have not attained 50%. So why don't you give us assistance first? And we also have to look at the overall supply and demand situation. Ms. McMahon? Chairman. We should not say whether an employer is unscrupulous on the basis of hours work. We'll talk about whether he is paid according to sufficiently. All right, we have an aging population. If the government doesn't improve its policy for RCHEs, if there is no timetable for the EBPS, then no matter how many laborers you import into this sector, you cannot have enough supply of places to meet the demand.
If the administration can conduct an overall review of the elderly policy and drop the relevant timetable, then we will be able to resolve the problem. We don't have to dwell on the details like work hours, and we shouldn't label people as unscrupulous employers. I think the ultimate objective is to provide quality service for our elderly in our RCHEs. Yes. Do you have any response? No. Ms. Helena Wong next. Thank you, Chairman. On manpower shortage, we are all very concerned. On importation of workers, well, this is a question for the Secretary for Labor and Welfare, in fact. A lot of women in new immigrant families, these women told us that they want to work. But then we don't have adequate services for taking care of their children. So if adequate childcare services can be provided, they are more than willing to join the workforce, and they can readily become workers in RCHG taking care of the elderly, either part-time, on a part-time or full-time basis. So I think all these factors have to be taken into account as a whole package. So would the administration think about releasing the work potential of these women that I talked about? Secondly, taking care of demented elders. RCHGs, in fact, there is a special subsidy for RCHG taking care of these demented elderly. When the money is given to the RCHG operator, does the administration require the operators to make adjustment in their manpower, say increase the number of staff by a certain ratio so that the money can really be put to good use for assisting these demented elderly, because they do need extra care? Do you have guidelines in that respect on the use of money or the subsidy for these elderly people? Yes, do you have any guidelines? On childcare services, I would make a response first, and then Ms. Lee would talk about the elderly with dementia problems. On provision of childcare services, we have actually offerings childcare services. Childcare services, 27,000 places, and then we have some neighborhood care centers taking care of children under 6 years old, and then we have around 720 places, and the services can last until the evening. Now, for post-school hours childcare services, there are 142 organizations providing such services with a number of 5,500 places. The service hours from Monday to Friday are up to 7 to 8 p.m. and depending on individual circumstances, some individual centers are open also on weekends. So we hope that these services can unleash the work potential of some housewives or women. And some members also mentioned about the planning on EBPS. I would like to say a few words on that. Ms. Lee also said that one of the ways to increase RCHG places is to buy more places from private RCHGs. That is a short-term measure. As to the number of places which can be bought every year, this is being impacted upon by a few factors. First, we will have to look at the demand and supply situation. If there is no demand, then we will not be putting resources into that. It's not that we don't have any planning, but we have to be very flexible in our planning. Okay, can you be brief, Ms. Lee, about subsidy for demented elderly? We are doing an assessment on an annual basis. This is the assessment done by the geriatrics team, psychogeriatrics team of the HA. They would decide on who are the elderly with dementia problems. Once we have the figure, then we will dish out the subsidy. In 2009, we started giving the subsidy to board-placed institutions. But we make an estimate, say around 20% of the elderly would have dementia problems, then we will use that proportion to come up with a figure on the subsidy. So last year, we increased substantially the subsidy for dementia patients. For every demented elderly, we give out a subsidy of $40,000 per year. Now, members are worried whether the relevant RCHE have correspondingly increased their manpower. Now, the approval is done on an annual basis, so RCHEs are required to report to us the use of the funds we give them. They have to give us details of how the money is used. For private RCHEs, they have to give us a report once every 6 months. And when our inspectors conduct site visits, we will also check whether they have done what they claim to do, say whether they have the physiotherapist on site or whether they have a 0.5 social worker as they claimed. Okay, next, Mr. Frederick Fung, 3 questions. I want to tell Mr. Tommy Zheng that when we talk about 8-hour work day, it's not that say that we are restricting the work hours to 8 hours. We just want to allow them to work for that period. Now, we also propose that for hours worked beyond the standard hours, they should be compensated. Second question, on the board place numbers, have you made or have you come up with figures on the number of places by regions or districts? Because elderly people are distributed in different parts of Hong Kong. Wong Tai Sin and Sham Shui Po has the largest number of elderly people. In Wong Tai Sin, 70% of residential housing is public housing, and in Sham Shui Po, 60%. So I've worked in Sham Shui Po for a long time. I see a lot of private RCHEs there, and a lot of them don't fall under the EPBS. So, say for districts where there are more elderly people residing, will the government buy more places according to the ratio of elderly people? And for childcare services, a lot of the mothers would put their children to the elderly to the childcare centers because they want to work. But then these childcare centers are not situated near the elderly centers or RCHE. So for districts where there are a lot of RCHEs, would you be establishing more childcare centers so to facilitate women with children working in elderly RCHE? I think you have to look at this as a whole package or on the whole. On the demand for RCHE places, if there are more elderly people living in a certain district, it is likely that the demand for RCHE is higher. But then that doesn't necessarily have to be the case. Sometimes the children of these elderly may live in another district, and they may require or ask for their parents to be arranged to stay in an RCHE in their own living district. So we have to ask the elderly for their preferred district. Do you have a distribution of the places in various regions? Can you give us a paper later on? So perhaps we will look at the 5 biggest districts. You have to understand that the elderly have 3 choices in a central waiting list. They can prefer the type of RCHE. They can give preference on the districts and also the various regions. So I will try to come up with some figures which can explain the situation. So when we buy places in the past few years, we have factored that into our scheme as well. We are very transparent. In the notes to application, we are very clear. We tell them which districts have higher demands and which districts have lower demands or places. So if the demand is a certain district is very great, you might not be able to live in that, enroll in the RCHE in that district necessarily. Okay, the next round is Mr. Michael Tian. Thank you, Chairman. Ms. Lee said that nurses are not, the nurses are not in acute demand here. Perhaps I have misunderstood. Well, perhaps you and I can take a look in the market on the skills relating to the 2 tubes and the 1 injection. On checking the number of staff members on an RCHE, how are you doing it? Well, the RCHE can actually call the employees back when they are on leave, even when they are on leave, when an inspection is being made. So the administration has very high goals, and they want to attract young people to join the sector, to take care of the elderly, all the very unpleasant duties. Well, if you want to attract young people, you have to offer, say, $40 to $50 per hour. Now, in a boutique, they are offering that kind of salary level. Well, you can also consider raising the CSSA payment. Can you do that in parallel? Why can't you go back to the 2003 level? Can you re-invoke the 3.1 ratio back in as in 2003? That's a simple thing to do. How can we trust you that you will be able to attract young people to join the sector? I think we can do it in a simple way. Just implement a dual-track system, re-invoke the 3-to-1 ratio, and I think the elderly stand to benefit from my proposal. I urge the administration to implement that as soon as possible. I don't really have trust in you in attracting young people to join the sector. For RCHE is not under the EBPS, the manpower ratio is 3-to-1, and that can also be raised to 2.1. I want you to confirm whether what you said is true. The ratio can be increased to 2.1 once a certain salary level is reached. I want to confirm this with you because that's not what the sector told me. Yes, 2 questions. Dual track and also the pay level, dual system. Mr. Law, thank you, Chairman. I want to reiterate that in November 2007, the LAB discussed the demands on the care from the care sector, and they agreed that on this special mechanism, when the local care workers have reached a pay level equivalent to the median pay level, then for every 2 local workers, 1 overseas worker can be imported. If an individual's pay still has not reached $9,200, then the employer can still recruit local workers, so they still have to stick to the 3 2:1 ratio. Now, that ratio has been implemented effectively since November 2010.
What about the dual track approach? I've heard this demand from the sector that they would like us to reconsider importation of labor for at least non-bought place homes, and also consider the overall impact of importation of labor. Right, you heard their wish, but does that mean that you're going to allow that or not? Because that was before 2003. This is very reasonable. We're not asking for something new. We're asking you to revert to your original position. Well, I think they have to come back to consult us first. For myself, at least, I would object. If you do not ensure that people standard working hour is 8 hours, I will certainly object. All right. No, you say that with importation of labor, we can ensure 8 hours. Then I would say you introduce 8 hours, standard working hours first. Well, every day, do you know how the elders are suffering? Do you know how much longer can we wait for young people to join the sector? Well, I think the Welfare Services Panel will continue to discuss this. Chairman, I strongly ask that the system prior to 2003 be reinstated, and then you can gradually enhance your board base scheme, and then you can gradually phase out the labor already imported into Hong Kong. Right, the joint panel meeting between the Manpower panel and the Welfare Service panel, and here you have heard of different views here. If any new proposal, please come back to consult the WSP as well as the Manpower panel. Thank you.